Welcome back, Bird Gang fans, to the Red Phantom podcast. Things are going to be a little different this week just because we had our bye week last week. We're going to be talking a little bit about the game against the New York Jets 2 weeks ago, as well as, the matchup this week against Seattle Seahawks. But let's talk about the bye week as well, because, man, there were some important things that happened this week with the Arizona Cardinals and, the NFC West divisional rivals that we have. But it was a great week this week for the Cardinals, especially on the bye week, and just everything turning out in our favor. So let's jump back 2 weeks ago to the Cardinals win against the New York Jets. So obviously, time has passed, whatever the case may be. Cardinals' last win was against the New York Jets with a score of 31-6. Cardinals have gone 4 straight games without giving up a touchdown in their home stadium. So that's always lovely to see. Kyler Murray is making a case for himself to be MVP this year. Hopefully, he can bounce back next year and propel himself even further, because I don't think, he's going to have much of a fighting chance against, guys like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I could be wrong, though, but, it's nice to see Kyler Murray, come back from his injury 2 years ago. Slow start last year. Now he's, up there as a now top 10 quarterback in the NFL, which I think a lot of Cardinal fans kind of knew from the get-go. But to see him prove doubters wrong week in and week out is something spectacular for us to see, and something that gives us confidence that, we would like to see going in and out for future games. So looking at the game 2 weeks ago against the Jets, Kyler Murray throws for 266 yards and a touchdown, no interception. He did take the 1 sack from Quincy Williams. I mean, we all kind of saw it blow up. His helmet went flying off, whatever the case may be. But they responded quick. They responded aggressive. Everyone was flying all over the field. Trey Benson was having himself a day. James Conner was doing great. McBride was getting himself involved. Harrison had a touchdown against DJ Chark. I mean, it was a great game to watch. And, as a football fan, to watch Aaron Rodgers play the way he did against the Jets was absolutely horrendous. I think he needs to just hang up the cleats. I think he is out of his career. There's not much looking forward for him down the road. He's already done enough. There's no reason for him to continue on down the road. Garrett Wilson, 5 receptions for 41 yards. Devontae Adams, 6 receptions for 31 yards. Garrett Wilson has Garrett Williams has been playing absolutely insane lockdown corner for the slot. He's just been playing wherever you need him to, wherever the case may be. He's there making plays, shutting down receivers. I mean, we saw it all game against the Jets. We saw Dadron Taylor Demerson come out and make his first start for the Arizona Cardinals. He played really well, almost had an interception against Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it should have been picked off, went through his hand, but he did, break up the pass against Devontae Adams in the end zone. David Collins had himself a good game. We saw Budda Baker finally get a sack for the first time this season. Jesse Luketa got a sack. Xavier Thomas got a sack. We saw, Baron Browning make some pressures. I mean, that's always great to see for a guy you just traded for, but it really was something to watch. And for how the Cardinals played this week, it was spectacular. And you look back, I mean, Kyler Murray ran the ball 3 times for 21 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive. I mean, Kyler Murray, Drew Petzing definitely getting back into the same chemistry. It's nice to see, Drew Petzing be able to readjust, readapt to making more explosive plays. I mean, I think we all kind of gave him crap at the beginning of the season going against the teams that we did, but he's really changed it. He's really turned it around. He's getting his playmakers involved. We see Marvin Harrison getting more involved. We see Trey McBride getting more involved. Michael Wilson's getting involved. I mean, all the players you want to see are getting involved, and it's absolutely spectacular. Chad Ryland went 1 for 1 on field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. Absolutely insane, replacement guy for Matt Prater, who's been on IR, who should hopefully be back soon, but I think Chad Ryland, if Matt Prater does end up retiring or, the Cardinals don't end up re-signing him in the offseason, I think he's a very valuable replacement for Matt Prater. I think he's going to be, a kicker the Cardinals sought out for in free agency this upcoming year if Matt Prater decides to walk or retire, whatever the case may be. But I mean, this Cardinals team, with where they're at right now, is definitely clicking. 6-4 currently on the season. It's week 12 this week. Things are looking great. Bye week looked absolutely fantastic. I mean, even just that week we played the Jets, things were just looking spectacular. I mean, you go out and you watch the Rams get upset by the Dolphins, who are 4-6 now on the season, and for them to get upset by the Rams was a huge impact going into the bye week, because not only did it give us the clear number 1 seed in the NFC West, it also bumped the Rams down to the number 4 seed in the West. So Cardinals are looking in a great spot where they are currently right now. Will that change later on? I mean, there's a chance. I mean, we do have the Seattle 2 times in the next 3 weeks. We have the Vikings in 2 weeks. Who knows what's to expect? I mean, divisional matchups are always hard, especially against Seattle, especially against the Rams, especially against the Niners. I mean, look at all those games. I mean, you go back and look at the Rams game at the beginning of the season. I mean, the team that was injured for the Rams, they didn't have Puka. Cooper Kupp went out early in the game. I mean, it wasn't a typical divisional game that you see, but it did help us with our ranking. It did help us with our seeding. It helped us with, where we're at in the division. So we'll take that there. We go and beat the Niners. Very close one by 1 point. Game there. Niners are kind of just falling apart with injuries, not really at their greatest potential, but for them to be in the spot they're currently at, I mean, it's impressive that they're still even at 500 with their record currently. Seattle, they had a couple of upsets, but they're kind of on that hot game winning streak, especially beating, the 49ers last week against in the bye week for the Cardinals. I mean, that's going to be a tough matchup, and the Seahawks are always one of the tougher matchups for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know why it is. That one team gives us the most trouble with, pass protection, run protection, pass coverage, run coverage, whatever the case may be. That one team is like the big rivalry for the Arizona Cardinals in the NFC West. I mean, we've seen, Russell Wilson, we've seen Geno Smith, we've played against, guys with Kyler Murray, we've played against guys with Brett Hundley come in the game, all these close matchups against Seattle. I think this game, this week, is a very, very big matchup. If we win this game, it gives us plenty of boosts to make the playoffs as the NFC West champion, which should be absolutely phenomenal with the spot that we're in currently. I mean, last week the Broncos beat the Atlanta Falcons, put the Cardinals back into the number 3 seed in the entire NFC. So that means we'd be facing the Green Bay Packers had the playoffs ended last week. But, there's still a lot of fierce competition. There's still a lot of games to be played, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's definitely going to come down to the wire, I think, for the end of the season, just with how everything looks. I mean, Rams have a tough schedule. Eagles, Bills, Jets, Cardinals, Seattle, 49ers. Saints are hit or miss. I mean, they've been playing pretty well since they fired, Dennis Allen. San Francisco has a pretty tough schedule too. Packers, Bills, Bears, Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals. I mean, those are all, heavy favorites for playoff contenders. Seattle's kind of in the same boat. I mean, us, Jets, us again, Packers, Vikings, Bears, Rams. I think that's the easiest schedule out of the 3 teams in the division, not the Cardinals. But this game could really come down to whoever wins the next 2 games in the next 3 weeks between these 2 teams. I mean, we look at it, obviously, the win for Seattle against the 49ers was much appreciated because the Cardinals, now hold the number 1 spot. Seattle gets bumped down to the number 4 spot after last week, but there's some fierce competition with Seattle against, the Arizona Cardinals. And for the Seahawks to come out, have a tough schedule like we did at the very beginning of the season. But for them, I mean, a lot of their matchups early in the season were not the greatest. I mean, you had the Broncos with Bo Nix, like, as his rookie debut. You had the Patriots you almost lose to. You lost the Lions pretty badly. You lose to the Giants with Daniel Jones, who just got released. Lose to the 49ers. You beat the Falcons, which, I mean, Kirk Cousins didn't play well. You lose to the Bills pretty badly. You lose to the Rams in overtime. So, I mean, things are looking up for the Arizona Cardinals with how the bye week has played out for us. But, after watching the Cardinals play against the New York Jets with how everything was clicking, obviously, Trey Benson's getting it together like I mentioned earlier. So there's going to be a lot of different options going into what's going into be probably, the matchup between the top two teams in the NFC West towards the end of the season. Trey Benson obviously has been making an impact. James Conner, kind of splitting carries now with Trey Benson here and there. Obviously, he's still making plays, catching the ball, running the ball still. McBride's making an impact. I mean, he's probably due for a receiving touchdown this week against the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, his last touchdown came from Seattle Seahawks last year in the final week where Prater missed the 2 field goal kicks to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe he's due for a touchdown against the Seahawks. I really hope so, because it's very disappointing to see him not have a receiving touchdown so far in the season. I mean, week 12, you have a rushing touchdown and a fumble recovery touchdown. I think it's time that he gets a receiving touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been playing absolutely amazing now. He's finally adjusted himself to the roster. He's finally adjusted himself to being able to play in different areas. He's now established himself as, a number one receiver, but not really one that's going to get the ball 100% of the time. I mean, we can force feed him the ball, but we obviously saw what happens with, the Washington Commanders, the Detroit Lions. We force feed him the ball, and, it kind of ends up ruining drives for us. With the way Harrison's been playing, with the way McBride's been playing, I'm fine with either of them getting the ball at different opportunities, or even allowing other receivers to get the ball. They've been playing absolutely spectacular ball at this point in the season. I think one player that I'm slightly, bummed out that isn't doing well this year is Greg Dortch. I think a lot of Arizona Cardinal fans had expectations for Greg Dortch to, come in here, make some, great flashes, make some great plays. I mean, obviously we saw last year his big motto was Greg Dortch the Torch. And for him to not really be much of an impact this season, I mean, it's a little upsetting. Hopefully, the Cardinals are able to get something done with Greg Dortch later on in the season, get him more involved in the slot position. But, obviously things have been working out. I mean, if the Cardinals do decide to change it, cool. If they don't, I mean, it is what it is. Football, at the end of the day, is a business sport, unfortunately, for a lot of these players. But for what it's worth, the Arizona Cardinals have been playing out of their mind. They've been doing an absolutely great job. One great player that we have not seen so far yet this season that might, and I mean might, come back this week is the first-round pick, Darius Robinson. Now, there's been a lot of talks with Darius Robinson, with his calf injury, personal issues that's been going on with his life. I mean, he has literally faced everything that could go wrong his rookie season. And I don't blame him for not wanting to come out and play football for the last couple of weeks. I don't. I understand what it's like to lose someone. I understand what it's like to go through injuries and to understand you're going into a new part of your life. And with everything going on, I mean, you just kind of need to step back and just take a break for a little bit. I completely understand it. But Darius Robinson might be back this week against Seattle Seahawks. If not, he should be back against the Minnesota Vikings next week. That would absolutely bolster our defensive line. Obviously, Braun Browning made a huge impact going into last game against the Jets, where, he had a pressure. He kept, making plays in the backfield, whatever the case may be. He was the guy that we needed for our edge rushing group, and he absolutely went out there and made the impact that he needed to. Obviously, it's up to grabs if we do re-sign him going into next year. I would hope so, depending on, how BJ Ojulari is, how Dennis Gardeck is. I mean, a lot of these players that we have on the team, they're old, their contracts are getting up there, but Baron Browning, with his age, with his contract, I mean, if we do choose to re-sign him, he'll be a cheaper option for free agency. Obviously, a lot of people want Azeez Ojulari or, one of the big name players, but for what it's worth, Baron Browning has been an absolutely great substitute draft pick for the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, going into free agency next year, we're going to have, top 5, top 3 free agency capital with the spending, the cap salary, and with a lot of players, going into free agency next year, there should be some very, very big names to look out for. I mean, obviously, T. Higgins is going into free agency. Is there a chance we pick him up? Yes. Do I think we're going to pick him up? No. I think they're going to stick more with, Harrison. They're going to stick more with McBride. They're going to stick more with, those kind of players. I think they want to build more around Marvin Harrison Jr., kind of like what they did with Fitzgerald. Is there a chance T. Higgins comes in? Sure. I would love to see T. Higgins come out in this offense, make the offense better than what it is now, but I just can't realistically see it. I think he's too much money for the Arizona Cardinals. Defensively, there's a ton of players going into free agency. Any one of them could absolutely bolster this defensive line. Any one of them could help bolster, our secondary, whatever the case may be. Budda Baker, I think, absolutely does need to be re-signed for the Arizona Cardinals. He's been having an amazing year. Obviously, every week he's come in as a top 5 tackler in the NFL. I think right now he's tied for second. But, I mean, you can't pass up the opportunity to have someone who lives and breathes football for the Arizona Cardinals. And for him to have the passion and the dedication that he has for this team, that's not someone that you can just pass up in free agency. I think, they're going to give Budda Baker a pretty hefty check in free agency, which is another reason why we didn't sign a whole lot last year in free agency. James Conner, he's been playing fantastic. Obviously, number 1 running back in break tackles, but, Trey Benson's definitely been making an impact. Maybe they resign him for maybe a year or two, just to transition James Conner out of the lineup and put Trey Benson back in. There's been talk that, Ashton Jeanty might come to the Cardinals. I don't see it. We just drafted Trey Benson. He's been playing great. Ashton Jeanty, I mean, historic college career for a running back. I don't see him getting picked up by the Arizona Cardinals. I think realistically he'll probably get picked up by the Cowboys. If the Arizona Cardinals do end up drafting someone, it's more than likely going to be an edge rusher or a corner. And, obviously with all the wins, I mean, the draft stock keeps falling and falling, but there is a chance that with Monty Ossenfort and his drafting capability that we do pick up someone that we have no idea about that would make an impact just based on the Cardinals scheming, based on chemistry with, Jonathan Gannon, based on, any of the other coaches. But I do believe that this team is going to be in the Super Bowl at least 2 years from now. It might not be this year. Obviously, it's not going to be this year because, there's a lot of holes that need to be fixed. There's a lot of inexperienced players. Playoffs is a definite possibility. Like I said, inexperience is just going to be one of those hurting factors in going far in the playoffs. Next year, I think we'll take the jump from, contenders in the NFC West to potential Super Bowl contenders with just players that we pick up, free agency, whatever the case may be. But I think in the second year, from 2 years from now, is going to be the year where everything clicks together. I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to be like the Detroit Lions from 2 years ago. They start at the bottom, they get some draft chemistry, they build up their team with the holes they needed, they settle in, they build their group up from the bottom, tell them, hey, this is what we're going to do it correctly, go out there, win some games, potentially make the playoffs in the first year with all the new chemistry, Kyler Murray being back finally, Jonathan Gannon being able to coach with everything in his offensive and defensive power with all the players that have come together. It really looks like that. And then obviously, next year with the draft capital, with the cap salary, it's looking great for the Arizona Cardinals. But I think that's enough of that. Let's talk more into the Seattle Seahawks. So going into this matchup, like I mentioned earlier, this is a very, very, difficult team to go up against. They've had some injuries. They've had, a bunch of bruises going into this year. But this is probably the healthiest both teams have been all season long. We've had some players, go on IR. We've had some players get banged up. Some key players, obviously, like Jalen Thompson, Darius Robinson with the calf injury, losing our right tackle with Jonah Williams in week 1. He is now being activated off IR, so that should incredibly help our offensive line with performance. Kelvin Beacham's done a great job. Obviously, there's some games where, he was getting killed, but he was definitely one of the better tackles to have in that position. He knows how the team runs. He knows the chemistry of the team. He was serviceable for the Arizona Cardinals the last couple of weeks with Jonah Williams being on IR, but now Williams is back. We might see him in the lineup this week. There's question there. Max Melton is questionable. He should potentially play this week. Amari DiMercado, if he ends up going out, there's a chance you might see Michael Carter end up getting promoted from the depth chart, which I think a lot of Arizona Cardinal fans would be, excited for. But, chances are, he's probably not going to get many touches with, Trey Benson and James Conner playing. Yeah. Isaiah Adams, he was listed as injured, but he's had full weeks of practice. Mellon, obviously, with his illness, I'm pretty sure he'll be okay, like I mentioned earlier. Jalen Thompson, he probably won't play, so we'll end up having Dadrion Taylor-Demerson play safety. He was also banged up a little bit with a back injury. He should be on track to play this week, so a lot of helpful, experience there. But, yeah, for Seattle, Noah Fant is questionable. Abraham Lucas is questionable. Leonard Williams is questionable. I don't think Leonard Williams has actually practiced at all this week, so he's probably not going to even play this week, which should be incredibly helpful for the Arizona Cardinals offensive line, going up against Seattle's defensive line with, Byron Murphy and Bohe Mafe and, all those players that are impact players for the Seahawks. But without Leonard Williams being a big threat in the middle, I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to get done through the run game. Obviously, the same thing could be said for the Seahawks with our defensive line. If, we have some players not play, there could be some question with how Kenneth Walker plays. Obviously, one of the big matchups is going to be whoever plays against DK Metcalf. Everyone knows DK Metcalf, the big physical wide receiver, blazing fast speed. There is chances that he is going to have a pretty big game against the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people have suspected that Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to have a pretty good game against the Cardinals. I personally just can't see it with how Garrett Williams has been playing. Again, one of the best slot corners in the NFL currently right now. He, currently is one of the leaders in yards per catch for the NFL with, only 4 yards a catch for the slot corner. Max Mellon, it's going to be a tough matchup depending on who he plays, either with DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. Sean Murphy Bunting is probably going to be the starting corner this week with Starling Thomas. It's going to be just one of those duke it out games for the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. We've seen both these teams play. Seattle is a very, very aggressive pass rushing team, mostly because they've been down a lot of games. But Kenneth Walker has been a strong running back for the Seattle Seahawks. James Conner has been a very strong part of the Arizona Cardinals offense. I think, with Kyler Murray's rushing ability, there's some potential that he could play, running, read options, RPOs with, McBride, Harrison, whatever the case may be. I think one of the big differences is quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, 191 completions for 276 attempts, 2,058 yards with 12 touchdowns and 3 interceptions coming out of the bye week. Geno Smith, on the other hand, 256 for completion over 347 or 374 attempts, 2,781 yards, 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. I've said this from the start when Geno Smith signed with the Seattle Seahawks and got the extension. I think he kind of robbed them. I'm fully firm of that too. Chances are he'll probably have a good game against the Arizona Cardinals just because, our corners are a little inexperienced, should I say. But, with how our defensive line has been playing so far, I don't think, Geno's going to get too much time in the pocket. Obviously, Seattle Seahawks offensive line is very much a hit or miss offensive line. We've kind of seen it in a lot of games going into this game so far. But the betting books have a very, very close game for the Arizona Cardinals. One of it being, the spread of the game. Arizona Cardinals are favored by 1 point. The total is supposed to go over, under 47.5 points. I personally think it'll go over. And the money line is currently split at 110 for both teams. So this is going to be one of the bigger matchups this week and potentially one of the biggest games in the NFC West division as to who will finish with the number 1 seed for the NFC West and potentially making themselves go to playoffs. I mean, we look at the NFC West, it's really anyone's game with how everything has been so far. Obviously, we do have the lead for the division with a 2-0 record. Obviously, both the wins coming against the Rams and the 49ers. Seattle, they're kind of on the losing end. They lost to the Rams. They lost to the Niners once. But they did beat the Niners. So they're on a 1-3 record, or 1-2 record. The Rams, they're kind of up there in the mix. I think they're currently 2-1 against, the 49ers, against Seattle. They lose to us. The 49ers are just in absolute desperation mode. You lose to us. You lose to the Rams. You lose to Seattle. You beat Seattle. So it's anyone's game. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who has the most wins in the division. Hopefully it doesn't come down to that because I would be, kind of upset that it came to that point. But this season is really up for grabs for anyone. I mean, so far this season has been a very successful season for the Arizona Cardinals, just watching how everything has turned out so far. But like I said, there could be potential, last week win for the Arizona Cardinals to push ourselves into the playoff contention. It really is going to look like the Arizona Cardinals should take the division. If they do win against Seattle Seahawks next week, I think their chances from playoff goes from like a 68% to an 82%, which would be a huge boost into everything. Obviously, and then after that, going to the Vikings, going to the Seattle Seahawks again, and then you go into the Patriots, the Panthers, and, both those games should be easy wins. But, I mean, obviously with how the Patriots have been playing so far with Drake Mays, there is potential that game could go into a shootout. The potential of, how the Panthers have been playing with Chuba Hubbard, that could also potentially be a shootout game there. With the addition of Jonathan Brooks coming back from IR. He's not expected to be on a snap count anytime soon for the Panthers, especially going against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. But it's really just, who is it going to be when it comes time to win games? We've seen Arizona Cardinals come back from hell. We've seen them, fight through hell. We've seen them, put all their heart into this game, and they continue to impress people game in and game out. I mean, with everyone that's lost to the Lions, I think we have been one of the closest teams for the Lions, and I think that says a lot because you go back to the Lions in week 3, we had the pick 6 that was called back because of the 2-minute warning, and it's a completely different ball game. We shut out the Lions the entire second half, which I don't think any team has done at all this season against the Lions with how great they've been. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameis Williams, they've all had a very big impact into what the Lions have become so far. But at the end of the day, it comes down to who wants to fight more for what they want to win. And we've seen that more with the Arizona Cardinals lately than we have with any other team. I mean, you look at the teams that they've faced so far in the season. You go back to week 1, you lose to the Bills, which was a very close game start to finish. You destroy the Rams. You barely lose to the Lions with, that kind of whatever play. Commanders, obviously we get blown out there. I think that was our only bad game of the season, shall I say. We beat the Niners. We lose to the Packers. I also think, the team just wasn't there mentally playing against that game. We beat the Chargers. We beat the Dolphins. We beat the Bears. We beat the Jets. We're on a 4-game winning streak with how the Cardinals have been playing. Like I said, they've shut out the last 4 teams at home with touchdowns. Jets only scored 6. Bears only scored 9. Chargers kicked all field goals, making it 15 points. So there's a lot of competition going into future games. I think this week and next week will be the 2 teams that decide if we are playoff ready. Seattle always gives us trouble. Vikings have the number 1 defense or number 2 defense against the run. They're number 20 against the pass, so maybe we'll see a little bit of something like the Miami Dolphins game where they don't focus so much on the run, but they can pass the ball downfield with Harrison, with McBride, with Wilson, with Dortch, with Jones, whoever else can make an impact on that offense. We need to see them perform against the Vikings. And then we go back to Seattle, the Seahawks come to Arizona. That's going to be another tough matchup. And then you have the Patriots, you have the Panthers, and then you finally end the season off with 2 divisional rivals with the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. I truly think that the last game against the San Francisco 49ers is going to determine if the Cardinals make the playoffs. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to determine it because there's a chance that we could win a lot of those games up until the 49ers. But if it does come down to that game, I think the Cardinals are going to pull through. But like I said, this week against the Seattle Seahawks, next week against the Minnesota Vikings are going to be the 2 biggest games for the Arizona Cardinals this season. And we've seen a lot of games so far. We've seen the Bills, we've seen the Lions, we've seen the Packers, we've seen them beat the 49ers, Dolphins, Chargers. I mean, all those teams have a very tough matchup. And for us to go into Seattle, especially Lumen Field with all the Seattle Seahawks fans, that's going to give kind of a not matchup, but kind of the attention that a playoff game would have, where there's a lot of fans there. It's very high energy, whatever the case may be. And then you go from Seattle to Minnesota in December, and you face, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now with Sam Darnold, who's been playing at somewhat of an MVP level. Aaron Jones has been playing decent. The defense is obviously one of the number 1 defenses in the league with takeaways, defensive scores, running, passing, whatever the case may be. So that's going to be a very, very tough matchup for the Arizona Cardinals offensively. Like I said, it's going to be one of those games where if Kyler Murray can get the job done, we will be a playoff team after that week. And that's not saying, things have to go our way. I'm just saying in general, if Kyler Murray can beat the Minnesota Vikings with the defense and, keep the defense on their feet with running the ball, with passing the ball, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the Arizona Cardinals to go far into the playoffs this season. And, we look at, statistics, we look at, whatever the season has for the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, and for this whole season, has been the number 2 QB for quarterback rating. 3 interception, which I think is a career low for Kyler Murray at this point in the season. 12 touchdowns, which is about normal at this point in the season. Kyler Murray rushing the ball. I mean, we've seen it all from Murray. And for him to go out there and make the impact that he has with 16 touchdowns on the season and 3 interceptions, it's looking great for the Arizona Cardinals. But I think that's going to end this week's podcast. Like I said, very tough matchup. Hopefully the Cardinals can pull off a win against the Seattle Seahawks, upset them at Seattle, in Lumen Field, whatever the case may be. It's going to be a great game, and it's going to be a lot of football played for the Arizona Cardinals this week. But we'll hopefully pull off a win against the Seattle Seahawks. Talk about the game next week. I'll see you guys all next week. This is the Red Phantom tuning in.